this Vistage, right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure. Okay, so
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that, because I'm kind of clueless when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Vistage is it's a 65-year-old company, and they focus on taking CEOs, presidents, business owners of small to mid-sized businesses, and a peer group will consist of 12 to 15 of those folks, and they all come from non-competing areas. So you can only have one CEO that comes from manufacturing. You can only have one that maybe comes from construction. You only have one that comes from marketing or food service. But there are hundreds of different categories. But these CEOs and business owners, they come together once a month for an entire day, and they do what's called issue processing. And so every single one of these CEOs and business owners, they all have problems that they're dealing with in their job and in their work, right? And as a CEO or as a business owner, it's a pretty lonely job. It's lonely at the top for sure. But this gives them an opportunity to come and actually sit down with peers that are in similar roles, right? Non-competing areas though, and provide them with problems that they're going through. And then you have 12 to 15 other CEOs sitting around the table that begin peppering you with questions and recommendations and suggestions on how to go back to your job and fix that problem, right?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool. I sat through one of those meetings just yesterday down in Brookhaven here in Atlanta, and it was invigorating. It was like, wow, this is pretty cool.
So do you facilitate that? Is that what you do?
As chair, I will facilitate. Now, in addition to that one-day meeting with the CEOs, I then personally have one-on-one meetings with each individual member of that peer group every month.
Okay.
And so for 2 hours, I will go to their place of business or wherever they want to meet. And I will sit down with them, and we will have a 2-hour one-on-one, and we'll go through everything from their personal life to their professional life, as deep as they want to go. But I help coach them through the things that are keeping them up at night.
Now, again, so somebody that might be watching, this might be a need that they have, or at least a felt need, that they feel very isolated. It sounds like guys and ladies that are isolated, that are in a small to medium-sized business. Now, what does that categorize that for us?
Well, it could range anywhere from a business that will have as low as maybe $500,000 in annual revenue, all the way up to 50 to 100 million. So it really runs the gamut. The sweet spot is kind of in that $5 to $20 million range on annual revenue.
Okay, so that could be something that. And it's specifically for CEOs?
Specifically for CEOs, presidents, founders, business leaders, business owners. Yeah.
And do you ever have, it's kind of out there a little bit, but do you ever have church or denominational leaders that are a part of it?
We do. In some cases, there are opportunities for either church leaders or other nonprofit leaders to join the group as well. I have found, especially with nonprofits, that they are some of the best sources for leads for me to reach out to, because a lot of people still don't know anything about Vistage. They don't understand how it works, and so it allows me the opportunity to have conversations to see if it's a good fit for them, and if they're a good fit for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think
I'm going to launch that in the spring, Paul. So that'll be probably into March, 1st of April, when I plan to launch the group.
Okay. Well, that is very intriguing, and it does sound invigorating.
Well, it's perfect for me because I have 40 years of knowledge up here, right?
Yeah.
And I'm still, even though I'm retired, kind of, I still feel like I have a lot to give back.
You're just repositioned. You're not retired.
My wife Tammy, she says, you are the hardest working retired person I believe I've ever seen. I'm like, well, I can't sit on the front porch in a swing. This is not in me. It's not my DNA.
Yep. Well, it wasn't in your DNA way back when we played Nerf basketball in your house too. So
that was probably my ADHD back in those days. I was a wild man bouncing off the walls.
I work with a bunch of college guys, and actually 4 of the guys are going into business, and a couple have already left the group and they're in the business world, but they're asking these questions they're just trying to find their way.
Yeah.
And so say you had an audience with these college guys, and they're in the business school here at UGA, and in one part of the business school or another, anything from marketing to IT to you name it.
Yeah.
What kind of questions would you want to ask them, and what kind of advice would you give them?
I'm a big believer in assessments. I love, I geek out on things like strength finders and the 6 types of working genius. I'm actually a certified facilitator in that as well. I think one of the first things I would do is I would encourage them to take some assessments if they haven't already, and kind of identify where their strengths are, right?
Okay.
And then I would recommend a book to them by a gentleman named Patrick Lencioni. Do you know Patrick? Have you heard of Patrick Lencioni? He wrote the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But he also wrote a book called The Motive, and that's a great book for folks that are at the beginning of their careers, or in the middle of their careers, or even at the end of their career. It's a great book, but the Cliff Note version of that book is it helps a person identify what is your why.
Okay. That's significant.
Everyone needs to have a why. So if I'm talking to a group of college, young men or women that are looking to branch out, into business or any venture they're looking to venture into, my first question would be, why do you want to do that? And it can't be a casual choice. It can't be something, well, I can't think of anything else. Well, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. You need to have some soul searching time where you sit down with yourself or others or a mentor, and you identify what it is you really want to do and why you want to do it. And your why should always be, I think your why should never be because I want to make scads of money.
Yeah.
Okay. It's nice if you can make scads of money. It's wonderful, right? But your why should always be what sets your soul on fire. What is it that makes you, get up in the morning and put your socks on and get to work, and enjoy it.
So let me flip this so we can kind of have a living example here. All right. Why are you doing this right now? Because you could be sitting on the front porch, you could be playing golf every day. You could be, going and visiting grandkids and coming over and spending time with your buddy here. And, why is it that you're doing what you're doing?
Well, I will tell you, one of my 5 top strengths in Strength Finders is developer.
Okay.
And so as a developer, I really enjoy helping people grow and help develop them, to get them to the next level or the next job or whatever it is, that God has in store for them. And so I knew that without, there's 65 strengths when you take the test. There's 60, there's a bunch of them, right? And that one's in the top 5. And I'm like, okay, no surprise there, because that's really what I enjoy doing. So for me, my why is I want to help younger, up and coming business owners and executives and marketing, executives to grow and just feed them with as much knowledge as I possibly can to help them get there. I love that stuff. There's been people that have worked for me over the years that today are heads of marketing, CMOs, senior vice presidents of marketing of major brands that if I shared with you, you would recognize every single brand, and they are now running, entire brand departments at those organizations.
Yeah.
And that makes that I'm more proud of that than I am any accomplishment in my career.
Yeah. And that's truthfully, that's why I'm doing this podcast, because that's part of that for me. And you helped to clarify some of that with me, even when we talked a couple of months ago, that this just fits.
Yeah.
I want to help people. I want to help the Bill Blacks get into people's lives wherever they might have that need. And that's why I'm interviewing all these different types of people, because I know too that your story is something that is going to help people. And I do want to dive more into that in a minute, but because where you came from and where you are, what you went through. I mean, I remember those days, back in middle school, and you were this string bean guy, and I was almost as tall as you. And now, if you can't see, I mean, I think you ended up 6'10", and
six. Well, I think I'm 6'7" right now. So.
Yeah, well, we do shrink a little bit as we get older.
But everybody's 5'8", on Zoom. So
yes, and that's good, because that's me.
Yeah.
5'7". So I'm right there. I seem like I'm average. In those days, all right, you have siblings. You're in this small town, this small college town in eastern Georgia, Morehead State University's there. And truthfully, when we were there, that was kind of, everything revolved kind of around Morehead State, and around County High School.
That's right.
And that's where all of life kind of happened. Sports were big in that time. And we had, I mean, who's the NFL quarterback that came out of Morehead State?
Phil Simms.
Phil Simms, yeah.
Morehead State, yeah.
So,
and Joe McGrain was a pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals. He came from Morehead as well. And there was a gentleman there at the university who had played at Morehead State, and then left and played for the New York Yankees and the Milwaukee Lakers for a time. Steve Hamilton, back in the day.
That is back in the day.
He came back to Morehead to be their baseball coach, and then ultimately their athletic director before he passed.
Wow. Yeah. So take us back a little bit into that back life, to where where you could kind of say, this is a significant moment. This is a significant moment in developing you and kind of helping you to be the Bill Black that you are today.
Yeah, no, that's great. Those days, I grew up, Paul, you lived across the street from me, there for a minute, right?
And, not a whole lot longer than a minute, but yeah.
No, that's fine, but it was long enough for us to meet and become friends. Yeah. My dad was a self-employed house painter, World War II veteran, World War II hero, wounded in action during the Battle of the Bulge in 1945, January, in Luxembourg. And my mom, for the most part, my entire life was blind. She lost eyesight in one of her eyes when she was only 29 years old, and then she lost the other eye when she was 44. And at that time, I was only 6, so I barely remember her ever being able to see completely. And I was the baby of 5. So I had 2 older brothers that were 14 and 12 years older than me. So by the time I was old enough to, understand life, they were already getting ready to go off, they were being drafted into Vietnam. Fortunately, they didn't have to go, thanks to the prayers of my mother, I'm sure. But both were drafted and served, in various capacities during that time. And then I had 2 older sisters as well, and I was the baby. And so, I was the kid, couldn't sit still. I was on a bicycle running the streets of Morehead, like a crazy man. And, come home when the street light come on at night. And,
yeah, we could do that back then.
You could. And, my mom, by the time I was, 8, 9 years old, Mom was, pushing her late 40s. So she was tired. She was like, get out of the house, go play, go run, come back for dinner. What happened, I was just this normal sized kid. And then my sophomore year in high school, I was still 5'9" at the time. I left my sophomore year in high school, and over the summer I grew 6 inches. So over a 3-month period, I went from 5'9" to 6'3", and then I show up to school on the first day of my junior year, and everybody is like, "Wow, have you all seen Billy Black?"
Yeah, who are you?
Yeah. And I just kept growing, grew another, 4 or 5 inches, after that. And, pretty soon, the basketball coach, had thrown me into the middle of the varsity team. So I went from like the third string JV team, my sophomore year, to starting varsity my junior year. And then my senior year, I just, kept playing and got pretty decent, I guess, because I had opportunity to play basketball in college. And I was getting all these calls and offers from colleges wanting me to come play. And there weren't major colleges. They were all, because I was such a late bloomer.
Yeah.
It was mostly smaller schools, Division II, NAIA, maybe mid-major Division I or II, but none of the big schools. But I had the opportunity to go to Lexington to play for a small college there called Transylvania University. And this was one of those pivotal moments in my life that has got me where I am today, because it got me out of the small town of Moorhead. Mm-hmm. And it took me to a larger town in Lexington, right, where there were a lot more opportunities. And I met people that are lifelong friends with me still to this day in college. And those guys had come from a different world perspective, and they knew where they were going, and they knew what they wanted to do in life. And I had never really stopped and thought about that. It put me in a place where I had to really begin to think about, wow, there's more to this world than, riding my bicycle around Moorhead, Kentucky. And so they were very instrumental in getting me to think that there's a bigger world out there. So I played basketball there for a couple of years, and then my wife and I, we were we were high school sweethearts, and we got married at the end of our sophomore year in college, just kids, 19 years old. And then,
well, and that was a pivotal moment too.
That was a very pivotal moment.
Yeah.
And then I moved back to Moorhead to finish college at Moorhead State, where I was asked to play on Moorhead State's basketball team. So back in those days, you had to sit out a year. If you transferred, you had to sit out a year before you could play. So I had a sit out year there at Moorhead State, where I practiced with the team and I was part of the team, but I was going to have to wait until the next year before I could play. But then we had a little girl our junior year in college, and life became, other priorities took over. I wasn't going to get to play I wasn't going to have a lot of playing time at Moorhead State, even if I had stayed, right? If I had stayed and played. But now I was married. I had a little girl. There were bigger things in life that I needed to take care of. And so I went ahead and did not, after that year, I decided not to play basketball anymore. I went ahead and finished school, got my degree, and started into life as we know it today. And one thing that I wanted to point out to you, Paul, as far as pivotal moments, there's always been, what I call champions of faith in my life. And there was a gentleman that was my childhood Sunday school teacher. And, I was this kid that I never missed a Sunday when when I was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. I mean, there was like 6 or 7 years in a row where I never missed a single Sunday school day. Every Sunday, never missed, right? And my Sunday school teacher, during that time, was a gentleman named Sanford Bentley, just a great man, still lives today, which is awesome. But he's a champion of faith in my life. But during that time, and then after when I was older, when I started dating Tammy in high school, she was going to a different church and was part of a very active youth group. And so I got involved, with that as well, because I was, wanting to impress, my girlfriend. So, was involved with that youth group for a time. There was a woman there that was leading that youth group that she has since passed, but she was incredible. And she was another one of my, faith champions. But it wasn't until I was in my early 20s where I really made a profession of faith. And and that came, it's really funny how God works, because there's a lot of addictions in this world. People can be addicted to drugs or alcohol or pornography or whatever. I was addicted to softball. Now that I'm not trying to sound cheesy, okay?
Yeah.
But I was addicted to softball, so much so, Paul, that I was never home. So I was on 3 different, city league or industrial league teams. I was on a church league team, and then every weekend there was tournaments, and so I'd be gone all weekend playing. I was never home.
Well, and baseball was your first love as far as a sport goes.
It was, and still is to this day. Baseball is my first love. However, it was really starting to take a toll on our marriage, and I'll never forget this. Tammy was pregnant with our second child, Rebecca, but we already had Leslie, and she was 3, I think, at the time. And we were living in a small house, and I was never home. And it was a big church league softball tournament that was going to take place in Roanoke, Virginia.
Wow.
And so the church league team I was affiliated with was going to go to this tournament, and it was a Labor Day weekend, 1984. And Tammy says to me, if you go to that tournament, and she had every right to say this because, I was never, I was addicted. If you go to that tournament, I can't guarantee you that I'll be here when you get back.
Wow.
And what did I do? I went to that tournament. But it was a church tournament. It's funny how God works, okay? It was a church tournament. And at this church tournament, they had there were 60 some teams in this tournament. I mean, it was huge.
Oh, wow.
And they have a big church team church service for all the softball teams and their families. And so you can imagine there's 1,000 people, in this, auditorium, and they always bring in a speaker so I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool, and Holy Spirit began convicting me during that service so much that by the time the invitation was given, I sprinted to the front, and it was there that I gave, my life to Christ. And it's so funny because God took something that was literally going to tear my world apart, softball, and he used the same thing to actually bring me to him. Isn't that wild? And so when I got back home, luckily Tammy had not left. And
I don't think that was luck, but we've talked about that another time.
I poured out my heart to her and gave her, begged forgiveness, and from that point on, really made a concerted, disciplined effort to cut way back on. She didn't want me to totally give it up, but I needed to pare it back because I was not present. I was not a good husband. I was not a good daddy. I was just thinking of myself and how many home runs I can hit this weekend.
Yeah. I can very much relate to that. It was for me personally, one of those moments was in a place called Swaziland in South Africa, and I'm playing on the South African tour, and it's the last regular season event over there before they swing back up to Europe. And I realized that if I didn't make the cut, I didn't have enough money to put gas in the car to drive back to Johannesburg to catch my flight back home. And at that point, I mean, this is 1983. Woods were still made of wood, and how we practiced at that point, most of the golf courses there didn't have a driving range, so you would take your shag balls out and you'd hit them to your caddy, and it is a Tuesday afternoon. Everybody's gone. I mean, in Swaziland, what was there there? There was a hotel, a casino, and the golf course.
Mm-hmm.
And literally people came out of the woods to watch the tournament. And I'm out there hitting balls and Gary Player's oldest son, Wayne Player,
Mm-hmm.
is out there hitting balls with me. And I don't know why he's hitting balls because he never miss hit a shot as far
Yeah.
as I could tell. So it's like, what are you doing? Do you know, go do something else?
Yeah.
Um, and so I have this conversation with him, and it's a philosophical conversation. And you'd be surprised what, you wouldn't, but a lot of people would be surprised the kind of conversations that take place on a golf course, on a driving range. And I just asked him, I said, Wayne, do you ever wonder why you're out here? I mean, what are you doing out here? And he stopped and he and he leaned on his club and he said, every day. I said,
Yeah.
wait, you're Wayne Player.
Yeah.
You're Gary Player's son. You are the heir apparent. You are the best ball striker in the world, or at least one of the top five. And
Yeah.
you're wondering why you're out here. It would seem clear to me why you're out here. You're just so stinking good. Now, for me, that's another thing. I haven't made a cut. I've been out here. I'm beating balls because I need to. And
Yeah.
and so that goes from that transitions back to my hotel room, and I go and I do what I think that I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to have my quiet time. So I pull out my Bible and I'm reading, and I have no idea what I was reading at that point. I couldn't tell you. Uh, but then questions start popping in my head. Hey, why are you playing golf?
Mm.
The why question. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be the best golfer in the world, win the Masters, give you all the glory. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you eat what you eat? Same answer. Why do you exercise? Why do you go to sleep when you do? Why do you uh, watch what you do? Why do you hang out with who you hang out with? I mean, there were eight questions. There were eight of them. And it wasn't until the eighth question that I realized I wasn't asking these questions. God was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that moment I knew it's kind of that moment like I knew that golf had become my God. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was what I lived for.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and it's interesting because you know this in sports too, because you wonder in sports, especially when you're kind of in the entry level, can can I play with these guys? Do I belong here? And and up to that point, I didn't realize that. But in that tournament, I did, and I
yeah.
said I can play with these guys. And at the same time, I realized I don't want to play with these guys. I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
done. And
Yeah.
so that was a turning point in my
Wow.
life, kind of like yours,
Yeah.
but mine was in, a lonely hotel room in Swaziland, halfway around the world, and
Wow.
and so
Yeah.
yeah, to hear your story just brings
Yeah.
that up, and you know
Yeah.
what? All of us have those moments,
Yeah.
and I think it's important that we remember them first of all, and that we recall them often, because for me, hearing your story just stirs up that faith again. That you know what, God's been there all along, and
All
He
along.
hasn't just let me go. I was talking to one of the college guys last night, and he has a friend that he went to high school with, and in this day and time, the there's a drug epidemic, and this guy was just a great guy in high school, somebody that he admired and respected and loved being with, and he came to college, and he just he went down the road,
Yeah.
and he's talking about every kind of drug that he took, and it was stunning that the guy was even alive, and now he's in rehab, and he's he is almost done with that, and he's the guy that he used to know. But the conversation that they had was similar. It's like, you realize that this is not just an accident. I mean, God had to have been with you for you to still be alive after everything that you put in your body, and that
Yeah.
you still have a mind that you can think. And
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
so for you and me both, I mean, we both in sports would have been so important to us, and there's still an important part. I think there's a lot that we can learn, but from that standpoint, It
Yeah.
it was used by God to help to make you who you are today.
Absolutely.
Without that story, Bill
Yeah.
Black wouldn't be Bill Black. Bill Black would be something different than he is. So
Yeah.
how did that kind of change the course? Okay, so we see spiritually what it did is it brought you to the foot of the cross
Yeah.
and you said, I'm not
Yeah.
worthy. And Jesus said, that's why I came. I came to
Yeah.
save you. I came to
Yeah.
save you from yourself and from everything else. And
Yeah.
so how did that kind of change the trajectory? So here you are, you're really involved in all these volleyball, all these softball tournaments,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Well, I just, like I said, I realized that I had a bigger call. There was a bigger calling on me, and it was, first of all, to be a provider and a great husband and a great father. And can you imagine if I had lost Tammy while she was pregnant?
yeah,
I mean, she was pregnant with Rebecca when all this was going down. So, it was just a critical inflection point,
yeah,
for me. Um, and that led me into, an act of service as our family grew. I got very involved with our local church. I became a lay youth pastor. I led a youth group of, sometimes we'd have upwards of 100 kids, on a Wednesday night or a Sunday night, and took them to, on mission trips to Jamaica and Mexico and, inner cities of the United States. And all of that, while my kids were part of that and while they were growing up, I think I tried, always, Jim Dobson used to say, more is caught than is taught.
yeah,
And I just I wanted my kids to catch as much as they could. And so I guess it worked out, because all three of our kids are believers, and many of their children are now starting to believe and get baptized. And it's, like the song says, the next generation and generation, and on and on and on. That's my prayer.
yeah. Preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words.
That's right. That's so true.
So I want to ask you this, because it kind of goes back to what you're saying. You're saying, what's your why? What is your why? So how did that start, or how did that kind of propel you and clarify for you what your why is? Because I know that the why, at least in my life, is kind of morphed, especially as what I'm doing for a job. That kind of changes, at least application-wise, changes. So kind of take us on that journey, because I think this is really helpful, again, for these college guys that I'm talking to. How do you get there? What does that look like?
I wish that I would have had someone ask me, early in my career, or when I was in college, what is your why? Because I think for the vast majority of my career, no one ever intentionally asked me, what is your why? I think the why was probably to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And God provided. He provided me to, with great jobs and a great path. But I never stopped and thought through, what is my why? I was really just too busy with life, I think, to think about that. It wasn't until later, what I call the early winter of my career, that I really had that aha moment that, we should be doing what we're doing for a reason. There needs to be a why, because I don't want to go to bed on Sunday night dreading tomorrow.
So what, just to kind of, so what brought you to that point? So you're saying in the later fall or later summer, you might live another 50 years. So it might have been summer.
I'll tell you what it was. I was part of the executive team at Scooter's Coffee. And as a result of that, I got to participate every single month on a Zoom meeting where we brought in prospective franchisees.
Okay.
And we would have 30, 40, 50 prospective franchisees every month on this Zoom call. But one of the exercises, and it was a full day meeting, we were giving them all the details about franchising and about Scooter's Coffee.
Okay.
But we took a big section of that meeting every month and we asked the franchisees, or the prospective franchisees, what is your why? Why do you want to become a franchisee?
So your executives, or those people in scooters, they were the ones that had that kind of focus.
They were the ones that intentionally asked the question. Our sales, our sales team, and I, month after month, I would hear these whys, and there was a lot of commonalities. People, they were wanting to get out of the corporate world, and their why was to become an independent business owner. And some of them were like, I'm trying to set up generational wealth for my children and be able to provide something for them when they, are ready to enter the work world. All types, everybody had a different why, why they wanted to get into it. And it really clicked on me with, well, what's my why? Why am I doing this job? Why, what's my why? And so as I, ended up my time there, that was the first question I asked myself as I was retiring was, what is my why for what I want to do next? And it was, for me, it was clear that I just want to help people. So I mentor people, I coach people, and I don't charge a dime for some people. I get calls all the time from people. Hey, Bill, I got a question, or hey, what do you think about? Can I pick your brain? Absolutely. What's your question? And where some people would say, well, I'll set up a meeting and I'll send you an invoice. I just want to help people. That's my why.
Yeah, you didn't retire. You retreaded.
Or as I call it, refired.
Refired.
Right?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, stoking that fire.
Yeah.
I love that, because I would say, for me, because I was involved so long in vocational ministry, you'd think that you'd know what your why is in that. And you should.
In vocational ministry, the big why is right in front of you. I mean, your big why is to bring people to Christ.
Right.
That's your why. You want to save them, from eternal damnation. But there's probably other whys in there as well that could vary from minister to minister.
And I think in this generation that's, up into the 30 somethings, they have more of a sense of purpose. They want to make a difference. So they want to do something that isn't just necessarily, making money. They want to make a difference with what they're doing. And being able to have something even like this that helps to propel them and helps to clarify, I think is very beneficial. So let me ask you this. For those folks out there that are saying, well, this is kind of a new concept, or I've thought about it, but I really can't verbalize what my why is. Take us on a little journey of what that would look like to lead somebody down the trail, what you would encourage at this point for them to do.
Yeah. Well, if they were talking to me, we'd have, first of all, we'd have a, fresh cup of piping hot coffee, because I'm highly caffeinated.
Scooters.
Yeah. 22 years in the coffee business, we'd have to have a cup of coffee, and we would begin that conversation around trying to determine what it is. I saw a meme one time is, be passionate about what sets your soul on fire. And I would just dive deep into what is it that you feel is your calling? What is it that excites you? Not what your job necessarily is right now, but what is it that you really, really, desire to do? And then we would just continue down that path of determining, well, are there opportunities to build a livelihood around the things that you're passionate about?
Because if you're passionate about it, you don't have to have somebody looking over your shoulder.
That's right. That's absolutely right. I was passionate about marketing. I really was. I mean, and I don't know why. I think it was just God planted that in me. and in college, and I'm one of the rare breeds that actually majored in marketing and then built a career in marketing. Outside of law or medicine, a lot of people major in one thing, but they never work in that field. They do something completely different.
That would be me.
Yes.
I mean, I majored in marketing, and the reason I majored in marketing is so I could learn how to market myself for professional golf.
Okay. All right.
So,
well, but all those life experiences work together to get you where you are today.
Yes.
And so that's, I don't think that there is a cookie cutter approach, Paul, for it. I think it's just, you have to have the conversation.
Well, I think you've given some. All right. First of all, I think that you said, having somebody that's walked that road that can kind of walk with you and ask hard questions and keep digging until there's gold. And then you also mentioned, there's some books out there that are really helpful that you would recommend. One is The Motive. Right?
Yeah.
And that's by Patrick. What's Patrick's last name?
Lencioni.
That's a good Italian name.
He needs to buy a vowel. Lencioni. Patrick Lencioni. And Patrick has a wealth of books. I mean, he's written probably 15 books.
Okay.
Right. The Motive is just one of them. There's another book that I love of his, and the title of the book will scare you a little bit, but it's not what it sounds like. The title of the book is Getting Naked, but it's about being vulnerable.
Okay.
It's not about literally getting naked. It's about being vulnerable, but also.
But that's scary to a lot of folks too.
It is. It is. Yes. Where you have to, open yourself up and let the world and expose yourself a little bit, figuratively, to someone. But I would also encourage folks at any place along their career path, but especially early. I would tell these college guys, I would say, find somebody that you respect and build a relationship. Ask them to be a mentor to you. Find a mentor. Find somebody. Maybe it's a teacher. Maybe it's a professor. Maybe it's a coach. Maybe, I don't know. But
maybe
find
it's
somebody. Maybe it's me, right? But find someone that you can be mentored by, and will ask hard questions, and will hold you accountable. To stuff.
That's significant.
Yeah.
It's significant. Tell us, all right, some books that you would recommend. And I know you've told us already some concerning the why, but tell us some other books that you would recommend for folks that are looking to say, just getting clarity on their direction and helping them, because I find that is just universal. People wrestle with that all through their lives. I just need direction here.
Yeah. No. There are a couple. There's 3 books that I think have had a profound impact on me for my career.
Okay.
And one of them is by John Maxwell.
Okay.
And it's called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Okay. I got a copy of it here. This is what it looks like.
Yes.
The 21, Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. It's an incredible book.
Okay. So just kind of give us a little synopsis of that.
So he breaks it down into all these different areas of leadership. And, he talks about everything from influence to the law of process, the law of connection, the law of your inner circle, navigating, hard waters. There's one law that has really, impacted me, and that's called the law of the lid. And that's an interesting chapter in the book as well. But the law of the lid really talks about that as a leader, when you're in a leadership role, most of the time you reach a point where you hit the lid. and you can only take the department or the company, to this point, and then you hit a lid, and then it's time for you to either move on to something else or move over to a different role. But then, the company needs to bring somebody else in that will then pick up where you left off and take it to their lid and move it on up, right? So the law of the lid, which I think, really speaks to limitations.
Yeah, that's great too, because so often I think if we don't have that perspective, we hit that lid and then we think, I'm just failing. I'm failing because I can't get it beyond this. So therefore I'm a failure.
Well, you're not failing. I'll give you a great example of my time, with scooters. And unfortunately it happened for me right as I was, investing, with the company and coming to my retirement day, because I told them 2 years ahead of time. But I had the opportunity to hire my replacement.
Okay.
Which was pretty cool. Right.
Yeah.
And so I brought her in about, 8 or 9 months, maybe almost a year before I left. Okay. So I had all this runway time to get her, brought up to speed and transition into the role. And then I was moving into some other things while I kind of bided my time, to retirement. But once we got her transitioned and into the role, boy, she took off and began just doing great things, and to this, it's only been a year now, but the brand is doing some incredible stuff right now. And I sit back and go, wow, well, I hit the lid. I hit my lid here, at the end of my career, and now she's taking it and making it, even bigger than it ever was.
And when you entered scooters, though, how many stores did they have at that point?
About 140.
And when you left, how many did they have?
900.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now she's taking it from that 900 to the whatever.
We'll take it as long as she stays there. She'll probably, and she's 20 years younger than me, so she'll have a long time there as long as she loves it. But she'll see the company, hit 2,000 stores probably before she leaves.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's one book by John Maxwell, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Love that book. The other book that is a oldie but a goodie, Paul, and I think it needs to be a textbook in college, and that's Good to Great by Jim Collins.
That is a great book.
This one is the gold standard for leadership and management. Yeah. So everyone needs to read this and read it often. And then another favorite book of mine that you probably haven't heard of, but it's by a gentleman named Howard Behar, who was, at the time of writing in 2005, when I started to work at Starbucks, was the president at Starbucks. Not Howard Schultz. It's a different Howard. This is Howard Behar. But the book is called It's Not About the Coffee. And lessons on putting people first from a life at Starbucks. It's not about the coffee. And this book, it's a quick read. It's, I don't think there's it's a soft copy, soft bound book. But this book dives into servant leadership and how important people are in your life and how important people are, at your work. And one of my favorite chapters in this particular book is the person who sweeps the floor should choose the broom. Which is a great a great analogy on making sure that you're talking to your people and that you're getting input and feedback from them, and they have the tools that they need to do their job, and being sincere about that. But and no titles. Just because you have an executive VP in front of your name doesn't mean that you can't stoop and still help someone that needs help. Servant leadership. I love that.
And that goes back to even something that you mentioned that's kind of one of the things that how you raise your kids is that you want them to see it, you want them to catch it more than necessarily they're taught it. And I get it. You need both.
Yeah.
But it can be so much simpler, quote unquote, you think, to teach it, but
Yeah.
but for them to be around you and catch it, and be around
Yeah.
Tammy and
Because
catch it.
if the walk doesn't jive with the talk, then it's not going to work.
This is where I kind of want to land the plane. All right.
Okay.
So I want you to take a little time and talk about Tammy,
Okay.
because it's one thing for you to be, and I get it. You've been successful in the world's eyes from a long, long time ago, but the one that people don't see and don't get to sit down with necessarily, unless you're, Paul and Darby Cook, is Tammy.
Yeah.
And I know that you would not be who you are, because I remember who you were before this. All right. And you remember who I was before this. So you can just guess, 40 years of spending with somebody, and it's been longer than that with you and Tammy. So tell us a little bit about what it is, who it is that Tammy is, that has really helped to make a difference in who Bill Black is.
Well, wow. Well, Tammy and I have known each other since we were 7 years old.
Oh, I remember, because you had a crush in middle school on her.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we had a brief moment there in middle school, 8th grade, I believe, for a couple of weeks. And she broke up with me because she said I was a bad kisser. Well, at 8th grade.
I won't go into any of that.
Yeah. But it's she's my world. We were so fortunate when our third child, our son Jared, was born in 1986, that God had put me in a position where she could come out of the workforce from working outside the home and dedicate her time as a full-time mother to our 3 kids. And while I traveled all over, so in many ways, Paul, she had to be mother and father for a lot of years while I was traveling. I was traveling sometimes 40, 45 weeks a year, and sometimes 4 and 5 days a week, every week. And so, it was almost getting back to those softball days, but we were in a different place because, we were now, I was a believer. She was a believer. So we had this, we had God at the forefront of our marriage. And so, we knew how to keep it together. But she has just been an incredible supportive partner for me that God put. She is my helpmate. She is, and I'm her helpmate. But we really talk about the fact that after 45 years of marriage, we like to joke and say, "But we're just day to day," now. But aren't we all? Aren't we all? Right?
Yeah.
But she truly is the love of my life, and I don't know. I don't know what the world would be like without her. She's incredibly supportive. I have drugged that woman. I think we've moved 18 times over, the life of our marriage, and she never complains. And she's the best boxer of stuff ever. She's tenacious. We are in many ways opposites. She married her opposite. I married my opposite. So fortunately, we attract and not attack. So that's good. Our opposites allow us to be who we are. But I can't imagine life without her. I just can't.
And I think
incredible mother, incredible grandmother, an incredible wife.
I think too that would be a good conversation in the future. Just talking about how do you navigate being a corporate executive like you were, and the demands that always placed on you, and yet and I know you had to struggle with priorities and things like that, and even struggle with maybe it wasn't guilt, but just gosh, I missed another ball game, or I miss, and here's Tammy, and she's just worn out, or she's sick, and you can't be there. Things like that. That might be another really good conversation for us to have.
I love it. That would be great. Yeah.
So, well, I want to thank you for this time. I think this is going to be incredibly helpful. Just focusing in on the why, no matter where they are in life, even as a mother, or, even as a kid, kind of going into that space. Why do I even want to go to this college? Why do I want to major in this particular field? What is it that's driving me to that end? And it's got to be something more than, well, it's be a good income, or I'll enjoy this. Well, great. Just because you enjoy it doesn't mean you're supposed to do it. You might enjoy the 4 or 5 seconds that you've jumped off the Empire State Building, but it doesn't mean you're going to enjoy the landing.
That's right.
So
good point. Without a parachute, for sure.
Yes. So please tell Tammy hello for us, and look forward to getting together with you guys again. And thank you so much for being here and being vulnerable and sharing these things. And I do look forward to it, a time in the near future we can do this again. And
I love it. Yeah, I'd be more than happy.
Yeah,
I think we could do a series of these, Paul.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. I'd love to do that. So thanks again, friend. And I will talk to you in the near future, I know. And until then, for everybody that watches this, God bless you guys, and look forward to seeing you at the next podcast.